guess when Mom was alive, she could have
Elaborated.
she could have helped out with it a little bit, but voice recorder.
Yeah, we were too busy eating.
Yeah. All right, now we're recording. This is written by Warren Mossman, Dad's father, when he was probably 15 or 16 years old, I'm guessing. Unfortunately, it's not dated. But he takes 1916 and minus 30 something, comes up with 1880 something. It's all scribbled up here. So it's an old document. And it says, preface. Preface. Like a... All right. I have been called nationally everything from a nature boy to a son of a bee, but my parents claim Scotch, Irish, Dutch, and English on both sides of the house. I will give you a little of my life history first. I was born north of Hubbard, Iowa, USA. My parents were farmers. About the first thing that I can remember was my dad shot a horse and buried it. It seems that it had fell or was pushed over a steep bank or hill into some mud or a spring of water, and he scrambled out of it and found it had a broken leg. So he dug a hole and shot it shot it with a 38 or 40.40 rifle and pushed it in the hole and buried it. The highlights to me of my life were as follows. I was born and raised north of Hubbard, Iowa, USA. I was born on a farm of poor but honest, hard-working parents. About the first I can remember much of was when I started to Timber Valley School, a little white schoolhouse in the timber down by a creek surrounded by flowers and a creek flowing by called South Fork, with plenty of fish and furs in it, and traveling its banks and water. What a nice stream it is. My memory of fun and thrills that I had along it with one of my brothers named Orrin Putman Mossman. His middle name was Putman.
That was Putt.
That's where he got Putt. Yeah, Orrin is Putt. And also the Indians, which came back each fall and camped on its banks. There at Timber Valley School, they came up from the Tame Indian Reservation. Maybe it's tamed. It looked like tamed Indian Reservation near. Oh, you know what? It's Tama. T-A-M-A. Tama Indian Reservation near Tama, Iowa. And it didn't take long for Putt and I to get acquainted with them, and they were nice to us. We were 7 and 6 years of age when we first met them. While we were starting to school, of course, Putt and I didn't get much education at school, but we learned a lot about native fishing, hunting, and trapping, also how to swim. And we had the nicest school teacher. Her name was Pearl Sheldon, and it happens to be my mother's name was Sheldon, and they were cousins. Anyway, Putt and I didn't get our 8th grade diplomas. Also, I haven't any birth certificate. They didn't give me any when I was born, or at least I didn't get any if I did. It was lost. Anyway, my doctor's name was Winnett, and I guess he was our family doctor, at least till our mother died and left Dad with 4 children, and 1 child died at childbirth. There were 4 of us children now, and Dad. Anyway, we started learning the hard way with no mother to guide us. Of course, Dad did the best he could under the circumstances, and always did up to his death, which was in 1957. He was born in 1883. Mother died in 1916 and was born in 1886. Well, anyway, we struggled along somehow. I, being the oldest, took on the chores of doing the cooking and Dad the farming. Of course, my grandmother Mossman helped me get started. She was sure a good old mother. She would have had to been to put up with all the nonsense and other shenanigans that we children put her through trying to help us out. My sister was the youngest, she being 3 years old at the time. Then another brother, Emmett, 5 years old, then Put, and I. My grandmother was Pennsylvania Dutch. My grandfather Mossman, I don't remember, but I guess he was English, Scotch, or Irish. The same way on my mother's side of the house. They claimed Scotch, Irish, Dutch, and English, so that must be what we are. Anyway, quite a mixture. Well, anyway, Put and I was going to school at Timber Valley School, and it wasn't a red schoolhouse either. It was a white one in the timber below a hill by a creek with lots of wildflowers and protected from the north and west wind. Also warm and comfortable, heated by a wood-burning stove or heater. Our next teacher was Miss Whitney, daughter of Clark Whitney, a good pioneer family. She was quite stern. How well I remember she being the only teacher that I ever got a whipping from. It seems that Put and I, instead of going straight home from school, we were fooling along the creek fishing or trying to learn to swim. Anyway, she got wise to what we were doing, and she had us stay in one day after school was let out, and she gave us a talking to, and that we were to go home instead of fooling around South Fork, the creek. Well, we didn't do as told. We went up on the hill west of the school, which was about 200 yards, and we started heckling her, which didn't sit so well with her. So the next evening, we were asked to stay again. So after all the other children had got home, and probably, after all the other children had gone, and probably home, and up to this time, she hadn't said a word to us. She was doing her chores, or whatever a teacher has to do, getting ready for the next day, and now she goes out to get some corn cobs and wood for the next day, and Put and I still sitting in our seats. So now was our chance. So we started to talk to each other, and she didn't show up. So then we got a little braver. Pretty soon we were cutting up and laughing, and in the door walked teacher with a long, slim sapling with the branches all trimmed off of it. Now the writing gets a little scribbly here. All trimmed off of it. She got a hold of me first by the hand, and what a good little whipping I got, which was just what I needed. Then Putt got likewise. Anyway, from then on, for the rest of the fall, we were pretty good boys. We listened to what she told us. Well, anyway, we had been into her dad's watermelon patch a night or two before that. Anyway, we got a slight scare that night. Well, they lived the second place north of schoolhouse on east side of the creek, and his patch of melons were right down by the side of the stream. Anyway, we had been fooling along the South Fork, doing as boys would be doing, when we discovered these watermelons. So we slipped into the patch and got us some melons, and we slipped back to the creek and was sitting behind the bank, out of sight, eating them, and I suppose talking, when lo and behold, there was two big explosions, and Putt and I took off down the creek and through the timber for home. Well, anyway, Mr. Whitney evidently must have seen us.
Dan.
Hold on.
All right. Anyway, we had been fooling around the South Fork, doing as boys would be doing, when we discovered these watermelons. So we slipped into the patch and got us some melons, and slipped back to the creek, and was sitting behind the bank, out of sight, eating them, and I suppose talking, when lo and behold, there was two big explosions, and Putt and I took off down the creek and through the timber for home. Well, anyway, Mr. Whitney evidently must have seen us in his melon patch and slipped down there with his double-barrel shotgun and shot above us, or near, because I can remember hearing something going through the branches and limbs of the trees on the other side of the creek. Well, we didn't bother his patch of melons anymore.
Love it.
So Putt and I was learning the hard way, and there were lessons long to be remembered. Anyway, the Whitneys were a very nice family, I learned later, so we went to school and fished and learned to swim, and later to hunt and trap fur-bearing animals, which was a source of income for a couple of boys. We also hunted nuts and sold them. We caught sunfish and sold them to Dr. Brubaker at Hubbard. I remember no matter how many we caught, he would buy them all. He would dress them, put them in the icebox, and fry whenever they wanted them. He said he liked them fried crisp so he could eat bones and meat, as they were good for one's body. We also picked gooseberries and sold to him. He was a nice doctor. He was small in stature, but had a lot of vitality. This being in horse and buggy days, he went over many bad roads and snow banks with buggy and cutter to get to his patients, and a wonderful wife he had, never knowing when he would be back for a meal or to sleep. Well, about this time I got interested in trapping fur-bearing animals. My dad showed me how to set traps. First we caught some barn rats and civet cats. The civet cats, you could sell their pelts after they were skinned and stretched and dried to hold their shape. At that time, they brought from 10 to 25 cents. Then Dad took us down to the creek, South Fork of the Iowa River, and showed us how to catch muskrats, and we caught some. So Putt and I thought we were really trappers now, but I found out later we had just began. Anyway, we were picking corn, trapping, and going to school all at the same time. Well, I took more interest in trapping than Putt did. So one Saturday, Dad and I were picking corn, and as we drove to the field to pick, we had to go by a tile outlet. And being early in the morning, there was frost on the ground and grass. And as we went by this tile outlet, Dad stopped the team of horses and says, "I believe there has been a mink fooling around." The outlet and ditch below, as he could see something, had been sliding in and out of the ditch and through the frosty grass. So we got off the wagon. Can you imagine how cold that would be in the wintertime?
They were hardy.
We got off the wagon and took a look. Took a look. We took a look. And sure enough, there had been mink playing all over the place. In fact, a pair of them, Dad says. There is a male and female. So being ignorant of the mink, I says, "How can you tell?" He says, "The male makes a larger print or track than the female." And he found some tracks that were separate of each other, and he showed me the difference. Well, Dad says, when we come back after dinner, we will bring some traps and set for them. So of course I was thrilled to think that now we were going after mink, as I had been hearing so much about them. The writing gets really fast. He's really excited about trapping. I had been hearing so much about them, how hard they were to catch, how smart they were, and also they brought some good prices. So to me, this was it. Learn to catch mink. So I really was a wanting to get that load of corn as quick as possible and get home to dinner and get back with those traps so we could catch them mink. Well, anyway, we talked mink trapping and picked corn till we got our load, which was faster than usual. So went to the house and had to unload the corn, and of course had to scoop it off by hand. No elevators in those days. Or if there was, we didn't have one. Anyway, we were hungry, and myself anxious to get back and get those traps set. So Mother had dinner ready, we ate, found some traps, and headed back to get another load of corn and set for the mink. Of course, Dad set the traps, 3 traps, if I remember right. One in the outlet of the 4-inch tile, one under a willow root in the ditch, one in a hole above the willow roots on the bank by the side of the tree, crossed out willow tree. This is fascinating. And of course, Dad was explaining each and every move. Dad was explaining each and every move that he did and why he did it. And I was sure listening too, as I wanted to learn how to catch mink, the prize fur-bearing animal of our locality. And of course, as I learned later, why they were, as the wealthier people wanted fur coats made from their pelts or skins, as some people would say. Now, as any boy would do, I was sure anxious to get that other load of corn, so I worked hard again that afternoon, picking corn and talking and questioning Dad about mink. Anyway, I remember him telling me that when he was a kid or a young fellow, that he set 6 traps along this ditch. Farther down on the ditch one afternoon, and that night or early morning, there came a big rain, and the ditch overflowed, making it hard for him to find his traps later. But he found 5 of the 6 traps, and that there was a mink in each trap. Evidently, a litter of mink had been raised there during the summer. So, to get back to our mink sets the next morning, I was first one up and got Dad up to find out what to do. So Dad says I could go down and look at the traps while he done the chores. So I took off on the run, and when I got there, sure enough, there was a mink in the first trap, which was set in the outlet of the tile. Now, when they're talking about tiles, they're talking about round underneath the ditch,
okay.
Just keep the water from collecting on the water. So I thought sure we would have the other one too, not being able to tell yet as the other sets were further down the ditch. So I hurried down to them, but no mink. So I was a little disappointed about them, but I thought, oh well, we have got one anyway. So I hurried back to this mink that was caught, thinking I should have killed it, as it might get out of the trap while I was gone, but it was still there, looking up at me with its dark, beady eyes, and I thought, what a small animal, but it sure was beautiful. And it stops.
That's it?
That's it. Isn't it something? Well, that's our history, guys. That's Dad's dad talking about learning from his father.
Out of trap.
Pretty neat stuff. How to trap. Yeah. How to do
Well, he
stuff.
sure was. He loved to hunt.
It'd be nice if you'd scan all this stuff.
I will.
There's probably 15 pages here.
Yeah, I will.
Isn't that cool?
That is cool.
It's like the beginning of a really good book.
Yeah.
And he stops right in the middle.
Yeah.
I know.
You don't know how old he was when he wrote it? You know?
He's just a young boy. I mean,
Yeah.
he's
He
probably in his
mentioned
teens.
8th grade, but then he never finished.
He never
didn't
finished
get
8th
this-
grade.
So he
Yeah.
couldn't have been much older than that, an 8th grader,
Cool.
12 years old, maybe Brady's age.
Well, anyway.
Well, anyway.
We
Do you
know
remember
Dad-
that?
Well,
Dad
anyway.
Dad would always say that, and you'd be talking, and when he wanted to talk, he'd say, "Well, anyway."
He
to
would.
Get back to my
Yeah.
Yeah.
my point of
Do
view.
you remember that, Scott?
Oh,
He would
yeah.
say that all the
Oh,
time.
yes. That's where it came from.
That's where it
Yeah.
came
His
from.
dad.
Well, that was.
Got that
You
right.
Thank
read
you,
that
Dan.
well, baby. You read that really well.
Hey, Scott.
Well, anyway.
Well, anyway.
Shut up.
No, you shut up. No, you shut up first. Oh, there's Lucky. Taking a break.
No, look, no.